The icy wind howled through the streets as Ethan trudged to school, clutching his tattered lunchbox. The sidewalks were cracked and frosted, just like the peeling paint on the walls of the small apartment he and his family called home. 3 more days. That's all the landlord had given them before they'd be forced out. Ethan couldn't shake the image of his mom's tear-streaked face from the night before as she begged Mr. Briggs for more time. But Ethan couldn't do anything about it now. All he had was a thin peanut butter sandwich tucked inside the lunchbox he held like it was his most valuable possession. His stomach growled at the thought, reminding him that this was all he'd have until dinner. That's when he saw him. Slumped against the brick wall of an abandoned cafe was an old man, his frail body wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing. His hands were trembling, and his breath formed shaky clouds in the freezing air. The man's eyes were half closed, distant, but when Ethan's footsteps slowed, they flickered open. For a moment, their gazes locked. Ethan hesitated. He gripped the lunchbox tighter, his mind warring with itself. I need this sandwich, but he looks like he hasn't eaten in days. The man coughed weakly. And that was it. Ethan's resolve crumbled. He crouched down, unwrapping the sandwich with care. Here, he whispered, holding it out. It's not much, but it's yours. The man's eyes widened in surprise, his hands trembling as he accepted the food. Thank you, he croaked, his voice barely audible. Ethan gave him a small nod, then stood and hurried away, the icy wind biting at his now empty hands. As Ethan walked, a pang of hunger shot through his stomach. He clutched it, wincing, but he also felt something else. A strange warmth spreading through his chest. For the first time in days, he didn't feel helpless. But if only he had known the truth about that man. The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, a sleek black car pulled up outside Ethan's apartment building. Its polished surface gleamed against the dingy backdrop of the neighborhood. Ethan, still groggy from sleep, peeked through the curtain. He froze. A man in a tailored navy suit stepped out, his posture confident, his gaze scanning the building. Then he looked up, straight at Ethan's window. Ethan, his mom's voice called from the door, laced with confusion and worry. Ethan, someone's here for you. Ethan's heart pounded as he descended the stairs, his curiosity and fear battling for control. As he opened the door, the man turned to face him. Good morning, the stranger said, his voice smooth but warm. You don't know me yet, but yesterday you showed me something I'll never forget. Ethan blinked, his mind racing. Who was this man, and what did he want? And just as Ethan began to piece it all together, the man spoke again, his next words changing everything Ethan thought he knew. What happens next will leave you speechless. Stay tuned for the rest of Ethan's incredible journey. Let us know in the comments if you think Ethan's kindness was worth it. And don't forget to subscribe to Elderly Wisdom for the next chapter. The morning air felt heavier as Ethan stood frozen in the doorway staring at the man before him. His suit was immaculate, his polished shoes gleamed, and his presence radiated confidence, something that felt completely out of place in their shabby neighborhood. Yesterday, the man began, his deep voice carrying a warmth that contrasted with the cold air. You gave me something most people wouldn't have. You didn't hesitate to help, even though you had so little yourself. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced back to the sandwich, the trembling hands that had accepted it. His heart sank. This can't be the same man, can it? The man's lips curved into a small smile, as though he could sense Ethan's confusion. I wasn't entirely honest about who I am, he admitted, his gaze steady. May I come in? I think your family deserves to hear this too. Ethan hesitated. His mom, Lily, peeked over his shoulder, her wary eyes scanning the stranger. Who are you? What do you want with my son? The man held up a business card, the gold lettering catching the light. "My name is Isaac Hayes. Let's just say, I'm someone who was testing the kindness of strangers." "Testing?" Lily's voice sharpened with suspicion. "What kind of test involves disguising yourself as—" "Ah, a man in need," Isaac interrupted gently. "I know how strange this sounds, but I've made it a mission to find people who act with compassion, even when they don't have much themselves. Yesterday, your son did something extraordinary." Lily's eyes softened, but her guard didn't lower completely. "What exactly are you saying?" Isaac glanced at Ethan, then back at her. "I'm saying I want to help. You're behind on rent, struggling to make ends meet. I've been there myself, and now that I have the means, I want to pass on the kindness that was once shown to me." Ethan's jaw dropped. His mom clutched the doorframe for support, her voice shaking. "You're serious. You don't even know us." "I know enough," Isaac said firmly. "And I'm offering more than just rent money. I want to sponsor Ethan's education, give him opportunities to grow, and help you find stability, whether it's through job training or other resources. All I ask is that you let me—" The room fell silent. Ethan looked at his mom, her face a mixture of hope and disbelief. He didn't know what to say. "Why us?" Lily finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because your son showed me what it means to give selflessly," Isaac replied. His tone softened, and his gaze shifted back to Ethan. In a world where so many people turn away, he didn't. And that's rare. Before Lily could respond, a loud knock rattled the doorframe. "What now?" she muttered, stepping aside to reveal Mr. Briggs, their landlord, looming in the doorway. His scowl deepened, the wrinkles on his face as his eyes darted between Lily and Isaac. "Who's this?" Briggs demanded, jabbing a thumb toward Isaac. "Another one of your sob stories trying to help you scrape by? Doesn't matter, rent's due, Lily. No more excuses." Ethan's stomach twisted. His mom's face paled, her earlier hope crumbling under Briggs's glare. Isaac straightened, his calm demeanor unwavering. "I think you'll find that's no longer your concern," he said, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Briggs blinked, clearly caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Isaac continued, "this family won't be pushed around anymore. They're under my protection now. So, unless you'd like to discuss the legality of your eviction threats with my team of lawyers, I suggest you back off." Briggs's face turned beet red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. After a tense moment, he muttered something under his breath and stormed off, slamming the door behind him. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. You really scared him off," he said, awe creeping into his voice. Isaac smiled. "Bullies like him thrive on fear. Once you take that away, they have nothing left." Lily sank into a chair, her hands trembling as she pressed them to her face. "I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to," Isaac said gently. "Just promise me this. When you're in a position to help someone else, you'll do it. That's all I ask." Ethan stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "I promise." What Ethan didn't know was that Isaac's generosity was only the beginning, and so were the challenges to come. What do you think of Isaac's offer? Will Ethan and his family finally catch a break? Stay tuned for Part 3, where new opportunities arise and new tensions threaten to undo everything. Don't forget to comment 2 if you're loving this journey, or 7 if you want more twists. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The food drive had gained so much attention that the local news picked up the story. Ethan's face appeared on the front page of the community newspaper, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like something good was happening. But not everyone was celebrating. As Ethan was heading home one afternoon, he noticed a small crowd gathered outside his building. He squinted as he saw Mr. Briggs standing at the front, talking to several people. The landlord's usual scowl was replaced with a smug grin, and Ethan's heart sank. Come on, Briggs was shouting. They're handing out food over there while your rent goes unpaid. If you want to get something for free, you better pay your dues first." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. His stomach twisted with anger. How could he be doing this? He rushed up the stairs, ignoring the murmurs from the crowd. He was about to push open the door when he heard his mother's voice. "Mr. Briggs, I've had enough of this." Ethan froze, his hand on the doorknob. His mom sounded different, stronger, maybe even a little bit defiant. "Lily, I'm telling you, you need to pay up now or you're out." Briggs sneered. "I don't care about your threats anymore," Lily shot back, her voice clear and firm. "You've tried everything to break us, but we're still here." Ethan's heart swelled. He opened the door quietly and stepped inside. Isaac was sitting across from Lily at the kitchen table, his calm presence contrasting sharply with the tension in the room. Isaac had been helping with the legal side of things, and now he stood up, his voice cold and unwavering. "You've made your threats, Mr. Briggs," Isaac said, his eyes locking with the landlord's. "But this is a legal matter now. You're abusing your power. If you continue to harass this family, we'll have no choice but to take action." Briggs's face turned a deep shade of red. "You think you can just swoop in and intimidate me? I'll make sure everyone knows how you're trying to get special treatment." Isaac stepped forward, unfazed. "Go ahead, but just remember, people tend to side with those who do the right thing. And right now, you're on the wrong side of this." Briggs stared at them both for a moment. Then, without another word, turned and stormed out of the apartment. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving a tense silence in his wake. Ethan stepped into the kitchen, his breath shaky. "You did it, Mom," he whispered, barely able to believe the words. "You stood up to him." Lily smiled weakly but with pride in her eyes. "We both did, sweetheart." Isaac nodded, his expression softening. "It's not just about paying rent anymore. It's about standing up for what's right. This family has fought too long to be bullied." But even with Briggs temporarily out of the picture, another storm was brewing, and it wasn't just coming from outside. The next few days were a blur of meetings and decisions. Isaac continued to support the family, helping Lily with job applications and encouraging Ethan to focus on his leadership program. But despite the progress, there was an underlying tension. Ethan could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. At school, whispers followed him everywhere. Some kids were congratulating him on his big break, while others snickered behind his back. "Just because a rich guy is helping you doesn't mean you're special," one of the older teens had muttered as he passed Ethan in the hallway. Ethan tried to ignore the comments, but they stung. Why can't they understand? When he got home one evening, his mom looked tired. Her shoulders slumped as she sat at the kitchen table. Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to say. "You okay, Mom?" he asked softly. She looked up at him, her eyes weary but determined. "I'm fine, honey. Just a little tired." Ethan pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. "I heard what the kids are saying at school. They think it's all because of Isaac." Lily sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know, baby. I know, but that doesn't mean we have to let their opinions change what we're doing. We're doing what's best for us and for you." "I know," Ethan said, his voice tight, "but sometimes it feels like everything I do makes things worse." Lily took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Listen, I know things aren't perfect. We've been through so much. But this opportunity, the things Isaac's doing to help us, this is our chance. You can't let anyone take that away from you, not even yourself." Ethan blinked back the tears that threatened to spill. "I just want to do something that matters. I don't want to be the kid who just gets lucky." Lily smiled, the warmth returning to her eyes. "Ethan, you already matter, more than you'll ever know. And what you're doing right now, that's the most important thing of all." But despite his mother's words, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead. 2 days later, Ethan stood in front of the community center, his hands sweaty with anticipation. It was time to collect the donations for the food drive. Volunteers had gathered, ready to load up boxes of food to distribute to families in need. Isaac had helped coordinate everything, and the event was going smoothly, until the sound of screeching tires broke through the calm. Ethan's stomach dropped as he saw Briggs's car pull up to the curb, the landlord's scowl a permanent fixture on his face. "What now?" Ethan muttered, already feeling a wave of dread building up. Briggs stepped out of the car, his eyes narrowing as he saw the crowd. "So this is your big plan, huh? Giving away food while you're still behind on rent?" Isaac appeared next to Ethan, his posture unflinching. "Mr. Briggs, I'd appreciate it if you didn't disrupt this event." Briggs sneered, his gaze flicking to Ethan. "You think you can just throw a food drive and expect people to forget? I don't think so." The crowd had started to murmur, some people exchanging uncertain glances. Ethan felt his heart race. He had never seen Briggs so angry, so desperate to regain control. But this time it was different. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "You don't get to scare us anymore, Mr. Briggs." Briggs paused, taken aback. The crowd fell silent as Ethan continued, his words growing stronger. "We've been living in fear for too long. You don't get to do this anymore." Isaac placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, a proud smile on his face. "Well said, Ethan." Briggs hesitated. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed off. As the crowd erupted into applause, Ethan exhaled, his heart still racing. He looked up at Isaac, his eyes filled with disbelief. We did it," Ethan said. "We really did it." Isaac nodded. "That's the power of standing up for what's right." But Ethan knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead would still be difficult, but for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. What comes next for Ethan and his family? The fight is far from over, but with each victory, they're closer to finding their way out of the shadows. Stay tuned for what happens next in the story of Ethan's courage and resilience. The morning after the confrontation with Mr. Briggs, Ethan woke up feeling a sense of accomplishment he'd never experienced before. It wasn't just the applause or the cheers from the crowd at the food drive. It was knowing he had stood his ground and fought for something that mattered. Downstairs, the apartment was already filled with the smell of coffee and toast. His mom was humming quietly to herself in the kitchen, a rare sound that made Ethan smile. It felt like the weight they had all been carrying was finally starting to lift. At breakfast, his mom slid a piece of paper across the table toward him. "Look at this, sweetheart," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ethan picked it up and scanned the bold heading, "Community Partnership Grant Proposal Accepted." He looked up at her, confused. "This means the food drive is officially supported," she explained. "Isaac submitted a proposal to get funding for more supplies, and it was approved. We'll be able to keep helping people, Ethan." Ethan's eyes widened. "Wait, so this isn't just a one-time thing anymore? We can actually make it bigger?" His mom nodded, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "This is just the beginning." As the day went on, Ethan's excitement grew. He could already imagine how much more they could accomplish with proper resources. But with this new opportunity came new challenges, and not all of them were external. At school, Ethan's classmates were buzzing about the news. Some were impressed, others skeptical. "So what? He gets a rich guy to back him, and now he's a hero?" one voice muttered in the hallway. Ethan felt the sting of their words but kept his head high. He knew that not everyone would see things the way he did. That afternoon, at the leadership program, he shared the news with Mr. Carter, who beamed with pride. "That's incredible, Ethan," Mr. Carter said. "But remember, with great opportunities come great responsibility. Are you ready to take on this challenge?" Ethan nodded, determination sparking in his eyes. "I am. I just want to make a difference." That evening, Isaac stopped by their apartment to discuss the next steps. He brought detailed plans for expanding the food drive into a full-fledged community initiative. "This won't just help your neighborhood," Isaac explained. "If we do this right, it could inspire other communities to start their own programs." Ethan felt a rush of pride, but also a flicker of doubt. "What if I mess up?" he asked quietly. Isaac smiled, his tone reassuring. "You will mess up, Ethan. That's part of learning. But the important thing is that you keep going. What you're doing matters, even when it feels hard." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Ethan balanced school, the leadership program, and organizing the expanded food drive. The support they received was overwhelming. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up, and the local news even ran a follow-up story. But the success came with its own set of complications. Ethan found himself struggling to keep up with the demands of his new role. Late nights of organizing donations left him exhausted for school the next day, and the weight of everyone's expectations began to press down on him. One night, as he sat surrounded by boxes of supplies, Ethan's mom came in and sat beside him. "You've been quiet lately," she said gently. Ethan hesitated before speaking. I don't want to let anyone down. What if I'm not good enough to handle all of this?" His mom put an arm around his shoulders. "Ethan, look at everything you've done. You've already helped so many people, and that's what matters. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep trying." Her words stayed with him, giving him the strength to push forward. As the first large-scale distribution day approached, tensions were high. Ethan and the volunteers worked tirelessly to organize the donations into neat packages. When the big day finally arrived, families lined up outside the community center, their faces filled with gratitude. Ethan stood at the front of the line, handing out boxes and greeting each person with a smile. He felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he'd experienced before. One woman in line stopped to thank him. "I don't know what we would have done without this," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've made such a difference." Ethan's chest tightened, and he felt a lump in his throat. "I'm just glad we could help," he replied. As the last box was handed out, the crowd broke into applause. Ethan looked around at the smiling faces and realized that this was bigger than him or his family. This was about creating something that would last. Later that evening, as he walked home with his mom and Isaac, Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. "You've done something incredible, Ethan," Isaac said, his voice filled with pride. "We've done it," Ethan corrected, smiling. Back at the apartment, Ethan sat by the window staring out at the quiet street. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time he felt ready to face them. Because now he knew that one act of kindness could truly change everything. The sun rose over the quiet streets of the neighborhood, casting a golden glow on the familiar cracks in the pavement and the peeling paint of the buildings. But to Ethan, everything looked different now. The food drive had been a success, the landlord's threats had quieted, and for the first time in years, his family had a real chance at stability. At the breakfast table, his mom was already dressed in her new work uniform, a simple blouse and slacks that somehow made her look years younger. She poured herself a cup of coffee, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Big day for both of us, huh?" she said, glancing at Ethan. Ethan nodded, taking a bite of toast. Today marked the start of his next big project at the leadership program. Mr. Carter had asked him to speak to the group about the food drive and how it had impacted the community, The thought of standing in front of everyone made his stomach twist, but he knew it was important. "You'll do great, sweetheart," his mom said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Just tell them the truth. That's what you're good at." The truth. It seemed simple enough, but Ethan knew the weight of his story. He had to show them that this wasn't just about a single act of kindness, or even the food drive. It was about the ripple effect it created. At school, Ethan's classmates greeted him differently now. The whispers had stopped, replaced by nods of respect and even the occasional, "Good job, man," from kids who had once ignored him. Mark, one of his closest friends from the program, caught up to him in the hallway. "Ready for your big speech?" Mark asked, grinning. "Not really," Ethan admitted, adjusting the strap of his backpack. "But I'll figure it out." "You always do," Mark said. "And hey, if you need someone to cheer obnoxiously loud, I got you." Ethan laughed, feeling a little of the tension ease. "Thanks, Mark." At the community center that afternoon, the room was already buzzing when Ethan arrived. Volunteers and kids from the program were seated in a semicircle, and Mr. Carter stood at the front, his arms crossed as he surveyed the crowd. "All right, everyone, settle down," Mr. Carter said, his voice commanding but kind. "Today, we have a very special speaker, someone who has shown us all what it means to lead with heart." Ethan swallowed hard as Mr. Carter gestured for him to come forward. He stood, his legs shaky, but his resolve firm. As he walked to the front, he caught Isaac's encouraging smile from the back of the room. His mom had come, too, sitting quietly near the door, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Taking a deep breath, Ethan began. "A few months ago, I was just a kid trying to make it through each day. My family was struggling, and there were a lot of times I didn't think we'd make it. But then, something happened that changed everything." He told them about the old man on the sidewalk, the sandwich, and how that one small gesture had brought Isaac into their lives. He talked about the food drive, the volunteers who had helped, and the families who had benefited. As he spoke, he felt the weight of his nerves start to lift, replaced by a sense of pride and purpose. "But this isn't just my story," Ethan continued, his voice steady. "It's about all of us. Every person here has the power to make a difference, no matter how small. What we do for others matters, and it can change lives in ways we don't even realize." When he finished, the room erupted into applause. Ethan's mom was crying, her hands covering her face, and Isaac was clapping so hard it looked like his hands might fall off. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a mixture of relief, pride, and gratitude. As the applause died down, Mr. Carter stepped forward, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Thank you, Ethan. That was incredible," he said. Turning to the group, he added, "I hope you all take Ethan's words to heart. Leadership isn't just about doing big things, it's about doing the right things." After the session, Ethan stayed behind to help clean up. As he stacked chairs, Isaac approached, his expression thoughtful. "You've come a long way, Ethan," Isaac said, "but this is just the beginning." Ethan nodded. "I know. There's still a lot I want to do." Isaac smiled. "Then let's get started." The next few weeks were a blur of planning and action. With Isaac's guidance, Ethan began organizing a network of community programs aimed at tackling different challenges: tutoring for kids, job support for adults, and even workshops on financial literacy. It was ambitious, but Ethan wasn't afraid anymore. He had a team, a vision, and the determination to see it through. One evening, as he walked home from a meeting at the community center, Ethan paused outside his apartment building. The streetlights cast a warm glow on the familiar cracks in the pavement, but instead of feeling like obstacles, they now felt like stepping stones, reminders of how far he'd come. Inside, his mom was waiting for him at the table, her work papers spread out in front of her. She looked up when he entered, her smile tired but genuine. "How was it?" she asked. "Good," Ethan said, dropping his bag and sitting across from her. "Really good." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before his mom spoke again. "I'm proud of you, Ethan. Not just for what you've done, but for who you've become." Ethan felt his throat tighten, but he managed a small smile. "Thanks, Mom. I'm proud of us too." That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Ethan thought about everything that had happened, the struggles, the triumphs, and the people who had helped along the way. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. Because now, he knew that kindness wasn't just an action, it was a movement, and it started with him. The community center buzzed with energy as families shuffled in and out, picking up supplies, attending workshops, and connecting with volunteers. What had started as a single food drive had now blossomed into a hub of hope for the neighborhood. Ethan stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, coordinating the day's events. Though the work was tiring, the satisfaction in seeing smiling faces made every moment worth it. Ethan had grown into his role as a leader. He wasn't just the boy who had shared his lunch anymore. He was the young man spearheading a movement to uplift his community. But with success came new challenges, ones that tested not only his resolve, but also his relationships. One afternoon, as Ethan wrapped up a planning meeting, Isaac pulled him aside. His usual warm smile was replaced with a look of quiet seriousness. "You've done an incredible job, Ethan," Isaac began, "but there's something we need to discuss. Opportunities like this attract attention, both good and bad." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Isaac handed him a newspaper. The headline read, "Charity or Favoritism? A Young Leader's Community Initiative Sparks Controversy." Beneath it was a photo of Ethan handing out supplies, accompanied by comments from anonymous critics claiming that the project was a way for wealthy benefactors like Isaac to buy good publicity. Ethan's heart sank. Why would they say that? We're helping people. Isaac placed a hand on his shoulder. Not everyone sees things the way we do. When you make a difference, it sometimes threatens those who prefer things to stay the same. Ethan clenched his fists. "But this isn't about publicity. It's about doing what's right." Isaac nodded. "And that's why you can't let these criticisms stop you. The people who need this help know the truth, and that's what matters." The backlash didn't deter Ethan, but it did make him more aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Over the next few weeks, he worked even harder, balancing school, the leadership program, and expanding the community initiatives. But the pressure began to take its toll. One evening, as Ethan sorted donations in the community center's storage room, Mark walked in. "Hey, you've been pretty quiet lately," Mark said, leaning against the doorframe. "What's going on?" Ethan sighed, sitting down on a nearby crate. "It's just, everything feels so big now. The food drive, the programs, the expectations. What if I mess it all up?" Mark sat beside him, his usual grin replaced with a look of understanding. "You're not gonna mess up, man. Look at everything you've done already. People believe in you because you're real. You care." Ethan looked at his friend, a small smile breaking through. "Thanks, Mark, I needed that." Mark clapped him on the back. "Any time. Now, come on, there's a mountain of canned goods out there with your name on it." The next day, the community center hosted its biggest event yet, a workshop series that included resume building, tutoring for kids, and health screenings. Ethan felt a mix of pride and nervousness as he walked through the bustling rooms, checking on volunteers and participants. In the corner of the main hall, he spotted his mom helping a young woman with a job application. Lily's face lit up as she explained something, her confidence shining through. Ethan's heart swelled with pride. She had come so far from the days when she doubted herself, and now she was helping others do the same. As the day wound down, Ethan stood at the podium to thank the volunteers and participants. His voice carried across the room, steady and full of gratitude. None of this would be possible without all of you. This isn't just a project, it's a community effort, and together we're building something that will last. The room erupted into applause, and Ethan felt a wave of emotion. He spotted Isaac in the crowd nodding approvingly, and Mark giving him a thumbs up. But the most meaningful look came from his mum, whose tearful smile reminded him of why he had started this journey in the first place. Later that night, as Ethan and his mom walked home, the cool air felt refreshing after the long day. Lily looped her arm through Ethan's, a gesture she hadn't done in years. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly. "What you've built here, it's more than I ever could have dreamed for us." Ethan smiled. "We built it, Mom. None of this would have happened without you." When they reached their apartment, Ethan paused at the door, looking back at the quiet street. For so long he had seen this neighborhood as a place of struggle, but now it felt like a place of possibility. "I think we can do more," he said suddenly. His mom raised an eyebrow. "More?" Ethan nodded, his eyes lighting up. "This doesn't have to stop here. What if we started programs in other neighborhoods? Helped even more people?" Lily's smile widened. "You've got big dreams, kiddo, but I know if anyone can make them happen, it's you." Ethan grinned, the excitement bubbling inside him. The challenges ahead didn't scare him anymore. They fueled him. Because he knew now that every small act of kindness could ripple outward, changing lives in ways he never imagined. And this was just the beginning. The story of Ethan's kindness was no longer just his own. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the power of community. A story that would continue to grow, one act of compassion at a time. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of resilience, kindness, and hope through Ethan's story. If this tale touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of small acts of compassion, we'd love for you to share it with your friends and family. And don't forget, there are more uplifting and powerful stories like this waiting for you. Subscribe to Elderly Wisdom today and be part of a community that believes in the ripple effect of kindness. Together, we can keep spreading these messages of hope and humanity. Let us know in the comments how this story impacted you. Did Ethan's courage inspire you to make a difference? Share your thoughts and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.